Hello everybody. Not Britain's hanging hour, but I'm Britain, also known as Some Okie Dude. I'm here today with Colin's Corner. Colin from Colin's Corner. How you doing, man?
Good, very good. Thanks for having me on the channel again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm like, I enjoyed our conversation last time. Let's do this, and it's Spooktober, so I thought we would cover it from Stephen King. It's probably backwards on my end, but you can see it behind him, so he probably gathered.
Yeah, I've been anticipating this. We've had some minor scheduling conflicts on my end because of work and prior obligations that were planned months ago that I forgot about, but we made it. We finally
Yeah.
we found a day.
Yeah, it's good. But yeah, no, we're talking about It today from Stephen King, which is, well, it's one of my favorites from him. What about you?
It's one of my favorites from him, and it's one of my favorites, I think, of all time. It's got to be in my top 10 for sure. It's just such a journey. It's such an
Yeah,
incredible journey.
yeah, it's a. I mean, if you can tell from this big boy. So yeah, but luckily, despite how thick it is, it's actually not that difficult of a read, which is nice.
No, it really, I mean, it kind of just flew by for me. Um, I think the first time I read it, I did it completely physically, and like it was one of those. I'm gonna look up who does the It audiobook because I've also done it on audio. Um, but the first time that I read it was a couple Octobers ago, and it was such a impactful experience for me because I read it in the fall time, and a lot of times I read in the evening. So I would just like pop my windows open. I could hear, the wind blowing, and if it was raining, like it just had that fall atmosphere, that fall smell, and it just like felt so right to be reading this creepy book in this kind of weather. And um I listened to the next year. I was like, I'm gonna do some other stuff that's not Stephen King, and I just like wanted to come back to this so badly that I like listened to it again on audiobook the next year, the same time of year. And this year, my whole goal for October was to branch out other than uh, some horror other than Stephen King.
Fair enough.
And this is just making me want to pick up at least the audiobook of it again.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's always kind of been there on for me. It's always kind of existed because I grew up and the mini series was out. You know, the one with Tim Curry in it.
Yeah.
I didn't read the book till I was in my. I didn't actually like sit down and read the book until I was like in not high school, but when I was like a teenager, and I was like, wow, that's really good. Much darker than the miniseries. I mean, miniseries is very toned down.
Yeah. Well, it was on TV, right?
Uh huh.
I mean, it got released not only on TV, but it got released on television at a time where I don't know. I think the guidelines were a lot more strict than they are
Well,
today,
yeah,
so they couldn't really do a whole lot. Um, Probably that they could have or wanted to do. You know?
yeah. No, it's. And then the movie came out in 2017. I remember I saw it with some friends of mine, and then the part two came out, and I never really bothered to go watch it because I'm like, I don't feel like it.
See, we had I. It's funny. I just asked Britton if we were going to talk about the movies or not, and here we are, immediately talking about the movies. But
Well,
I
I
have a
mean,
bit of a unique experience because I saw the new ones first before I
oh,
saw the miniseries. I read the book first, then I saw the movies, the newest movies. Then I went back and watched the Tim Curry version. And um, one of the reasons I asked if we were going to talk about the movies is because one thing I wanted to ask you about is what do you prefer? Whose portrayal of Pennywise do you prefer? Which Tim Curry or Skarsgård do you think
oh
does a
man.
better job? I
Oh
know it's a
man,
tough question.
it's It's really good because they're both very strong performances. I'll have to say Skarsgård because he actually was freaky. As like, I really loved how he moved his body, you know. And I know some of that was probably special effects, but I think in real life he can also kind of move his body in really weird ways. Really makes it feel like it's this, you know, thing from another world.
Yeah, I think Skarsgård did a better job of embodying Pennywise from the book, if that
Yeah,
makes
in the
sense.
miniseries, he's more like that, like, bully, you know? That bully you just need to punch in
Yeah.
the face and he'll leave you alone. And don't get me wrong, I like Tim Curry's version. He definitely
Oh,
has his creepy
yeah.
moments, but, and I remember, I don't know if you've ever watched The Nostalgia Critic before, but, he made a point, he's like, Curry's Pennywise actually felt like a clown. And I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I'll agree with that. He definitely has that kind of goofiness. He definitely captured the goofiness of a clown. Well,
Yeah, they
supposed to.
laid into that like
Now everyone's
creepy
scared of him
clown.
nowadays. Oh, I was just saying, everyone's scared of him nowadays. It seems.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a big craze like when that miniseries came out where I think a lot of people like developed their fear of clowns
Yeah,
because of that. Like maybe seeing that when they were too young or something like that.
probably, yeah. Um, but, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Skarsgård really felt like how I imagined Pennywise in the book. Kind of this weird creature thing. Like, the one in the
Yeah,
90s felt like a bully, you know?
I think Skarsgård elicited more of a feeling of like terror,
Mm-hmm.
and Curry's performance, like you said, was fantastic, and it was just different. It's not how I pictured Pennywise in the book. And like I said, I kind of did it out of order. You know, a lot of people either saw the miniseries first or read the book first, and then they saw the new ones. But I read the book, then I watched the new ones, and it kind of solidified that really scary, terroristic Pennywise. And then I went back and watched the miniseries, and it was good. I mean, I had to, you know, obviously overlook some of the just cheesy 80s
Yeah.
acting and stuff like that. But you know, it is what it is, and it's awesome too, like in its own way. But I really liked especially the first part of the newer movies a lot.
Yeah, most people think that the stuff with the kids is more is better, which, you know, I guess I can see it. But that's kind of what I like about the book is that it really plays with time. You know, it cuts from 1955 to 1985, and it's more like it's going back and forth throughout the narrative.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't the book open with the scene with Adrian Mellon and his boyfriend?
I think
I don't
it
know for
opens with
sure.
Georgie, but I could be wrong.
Does it open with Georgie? Okay.
I think it does.
I, okay.
Uh, oh, yes, it does. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you're right. It opens with Georgie.
Yeah. And like I said in our episode where we were talking on my podcast, if you don't think that Stephen King can write horror, well, I recommend you read the first part of It with Georgie and the Clown, because it's very good. Very, like,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, no, you could kind of be like, this kid really, this dude's in a sewer, and he's saying, come down with me. How didn't he get sussed out, you know? But, to be fair, he was only like 6, maybe? I don't remember.
Yeah, he was because I think aren't the kids like 11 or something, 10 or
Yeah.
11, something around that in the book. So Georgie must have been, yeah, like 6 or 7 at that age where, you know, I mean, shit, even if you were 10 or 11, you know, Pennywise is pretty convincing. That's like one of the scariest parts about him.
Yeah. He's like, it blew me away. You know, that's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of going back to yeah, it's interesting how well, what's funny is that the miniseries kind of follows the book more. It's the 50s, and then they're in the 80s. While in the movies kind of moved the timeline from the 80s to now, pretty much.
Yeah, they modernize it,
Which is
which
fine.
I was okay with. I mean, they modernized it to a certain extent, at least,
Yeah.
and it worked out for me, But I think, the book really switches back and forth a lot
Mm-hmm.
between, like, inside of the narrative. It switches back and forth between the parents, or the not the parents, but the adults and the children. Like, it even will do it, I think, within chapters, even sometimes, like the
Oh, yeah.
within the chapter breaks, like he would just switch back to the adults. And um it was such a interesting way to build out all these characters. Like, it was the first book that I really felt like I knew all of these people so intimately by the end of this book.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, you know them as children, and then, like, you get to see, like, I think King tends to do this a lot with his characters, where he will portray, like, the adults, but their actions, we're able to see kind of what childhood traumas have done to them to make them act the way that they act today. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we read about the adults too, we see the little kid versions of these people in the actions that they take, as even in their professions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, all their professions make sense when they become adults.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool how he kind of developed it that way, and let us know the kids a little bit, then the adults a little bit, then just switching back and forth, we get to know them a little bit more in each version of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say one of the big themes of this novel is trauma, and how trauma, not only how it ripples throughout your life, but also how you can overcome it as well. Which, I mean, I think one could argue this is like one big metaphor for overcoming trauma. Or, well, that's what I got from it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, that essentially is what it is. I mean, Pennywise, the entity of it, you know, it just exacerbates that feeling, that true fear, because, I feel like the older that we get, the older that I get, I'll speak for myself, slashers and, like, just The Grudge, The Ring, that realm of horror, I still love to watch, but it doesn't really scare me anymore like it
Mm-hmm.
used to when I was 11, 12, 13,
Mm-hmm.
But when I read stuff like it, yeah, it is a big scary, Pennywise is a big scary clown, but really, like, the scariest part about him is how he preys on these people's, like, biggest, truest fears,
Mm-hmm.
and drives them nuts with it.
Mm-hmm.
And brings out that feeling that they felt when, Bev was getting abused by her father,
Mm-hmm.
or Eddie was getting hounded by his mother, or, just all these different things that really scared these kids and shaped them as adults. Like, Pennywise knows it and just pricks it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's interesting about it. It's not that he like just eats their flesh. It's almost like he preys on their childlike fear, because he says it. I think it's like he likes the fear of it. He doesn't. It's not necessarily like the meat, whatever.
Yeah, I think he even said, like, the fear of children makes them taste better,
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
something like that, like more rich. I don't know, some extremely messed up imagery going on there, but it's like he's seasoning his dish by
Mm-hmm.
scaring the absolute crap out of them right before he, like, eats them,
Yeah, no, he's
because that makes them taste better. I don't know.
yeah, he's a vicious, vicious clown. That's for sure. He's not friendly. Don't invite him to the birthday parties.
No.
But yeah, I would say this book is about overcoming trauma, but there's a lot of themes in this story, like the power of friendship, which might sound kind of goofy to some, but it's done really well in this book. Or at least I think it is.
Yeah, it might that might be the overarching theme. I mean, like you said, there's plenty of themes, but the losers club and the camaraderie that they build and then share throughout their childhood, it's I don't know how King is able to do it, but he is the author that writes children of this age the most believably to me.
Oh, I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
there's nothing that ever feels cheesy or forced or out of touch with reality, even in, their dialogue, the goofy things that they say. Like he somehow just has a knack for knowing and being in that mindset. And like as I was reading through this book, I just remember like the silly little adventures that I would go on with some of like my best friends around this age and the stuff that we would like pretend to do and the feelings of genuine fear or just elation,
Mm-hmm.
as we were just like hanging out doing stuff. Like he captures that, and um it's just something that I haven't seen replicated in my personal reading career in any other author.
Yeah, no, I haven't really seen that either. Maybe oh, I don't know. I mean, I know there's like the kids on bike thing, like, Stranger Things or even E.T., you know. One thing I would like to see Steven Spielberg do a King adaptation. I think he would be very good at it. Because they both have that
That would be
understanding of
interesting.
children.
Yeah. Yeah, I could
Um,
definitely see that.
though I think what's interesting about this book is just how, well, not just how big it is, but there's so much history and lore and just so many strange characters that inhabit this place, Derry, which is basically Bangor, Maine, as Stephen King remembers it from when he was a kid. Um,
Yeah.
because if I remember
I
right,
think
Stephen King grew up in Bangor, I think.
I don't know if that's where he grew up or not, but that's certainly where I believe he resides now.
Yeah, he's in Maine. I know he's in Maine. I think he was.
It
I
might
think
not
he
be
was born there.
Bangor, but yeah, it's well, he has a history of successfully being able to do this, and we see the beginnings of it in Carrie, although it isn't that prevalent, the small town feel. I
Mm-hmm.
think where it really starts to shine and still isn't even at its pinnacle yet is in Salem's Lot.
Oh yeah.
Just kind of creating this small town America feel where everybody knows everybody's business and like everyone's showing up to the high school football team's game type of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
there's the family owned businesses and the town's deepest darkest secrets that everyone knows about but doesn't ever talk about type of thing. Like that, this is the pinnacle of that
Yeah, I
whole
agree.
thing.
This is. I think this is his best take on the theme he likes to play with of this small town with a dark underbelly, because
Literally.
he yeah, because Pennywise lives in the sewers. That's right. Yeah, he's a maniac. Um, but also, I what I find is interesting is that the story is also about evil. Well, I'll put, well, it's kind of about it's about good versus evil in its like primordial form, I think, sort of. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we see tiny microcosms of that theme throughout this entire book
Mm-hmm.
with Bev and her father. Like I said, we get a lot of it with the history of just overt racism in the town of Derry that we get through the
Mm-hmm.
eyes of Mike and through the eyes of Mike's father, and those cutback scenes where Mike's talking to his parents as a kid. We see it there for sure, and obviously with Pennywise. But another one of the big ones too is the kids realizing that the people in this town, the adults in this town, know about this, but turn a blind eye to it almost because
Yeah.
they just can't believe that it's true.
Something.
Although the evidence is there, like kids keep dying every 27 years, but nobody wants to do anything about it. It's like it just gets written off. And so many things in life are like that too.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like it's almost like it's. I've mentioned this before, but it's almost like the being or Pennywise or whatever you want to call it, and it's almost like it feeds off of, well, not necessarily that they're cruel or vicious. It's that they're indifferent to it. They don't care enough to try, and it's kind of the thing. Like it's not there because like it's some demon out from hell. It's there because they're letting it be there. You know.
Yeah, it's part of what makes Pennywise even scarier is that it isn't just this big bad being that just roams around the town and takes whatever it wants. It's a thing that's insidious. It's within the town. It's something that the people know about but don't do anything about. And like I guess like King does such a good job of really making that fear visceral as the kid trying to tell their parents something and their parents just don't believe that it's true and how alone you must feel like in that moment, like when Bev was in the bathroom and the blood was everywhere
Mm-hmm.
and her dad came in, she's like, how do you not see this, like why are you yelling at me, how do you not see what's going on right now? And then like I just her the way her heart must have felt in that moment, like I felt that when I was reading that scene, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, King's really good at putting you into the moment. You're right there with the characters. He's very good at that. Especially with the Georgie scene. Like you can feel the rain. You can sense it. You're there. You can imagine it in
Yeah,
your
I
head.
think he even like there's like a line in there I think that he talks about how the rain sounds when it's like pattering on top of the hood of the rain jacket, and I was like, I know that feeling. I know that sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, King is very good at that, and yeah, I think he does it the best in it. Though, I mean, if I'm talking like straight horror novel, I'd probably say Pet Cemetery is my favorite of his. But I mean, I think it is his magnum opus in terms of like him discussing his sort of theories about life and why people or talking about like evil, good and evil, and how it walks among us. Um, and that evil isn't just a supernatural thing. It's it can be as regular as any of the people, just like as you mentioned earlier, turning a blind eye to everything that's going on, rather it be because they just can't believe it or they don't care enough to do anything
Yeah.
about it. Which I don't know
Yeah, for
what's
sure.
worse. I don't know what's worse, but
I don't either. It's oftentimes this type of stuff that King writes and other authors that really nowadays scares me, like internally, because it's real stuff, not necessarily Pennywise being real, but these psychological terrors.
mm-hmm.
Um, like you touched on with Pet Cemetery, it's a similar idea too. It's what without getting into spoilers for Pet Cemetery, but what it sounds insane, but if you had a child and this happened,
What would you do?
does this idea sound as insane as it did before this happened? I don't know. Like, um, it's and one of the cool things, another aspect of this book that was really fun to kind of read about was because when they grow up and the adults move on and leave the town of Derry, they forget
Yeah, I
what
know that.
happened.
That always throws me off. I'm like, how do you forget that?
It was
How
such a
it's
cool aspect of it though, because Mike never left, and so he had to spend all this time trying to convince other adults that this happened. It happened to you. It happened in our town, and we promised to stop it. And he's like, just go to this place, go to that place, and like he sent them all to like their own individual places, and they all witnessed it again and like came to believe. And that was really, I think, just a weird but fun way to spice this up a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it's interesting. That's one of the things that always kind of threw me off, though. It's like, how do you forget that? Yeah, that would probably like. I mean, I don't know. I've never experienced anything like that, but I would think that would stick with you in some way. I mean, I get like life getting in the way, but I don't know, fighting off an eldritch abomination. I think I would remember that.
I think it's might be mentioned, and I might be making this up, but I'm not sure that it's kind of part of the curse of Pennywise. Like, there's a magic behind it.
Yeah, if I remember, he does have like powers of some sort.
Well, yeah, because he's not necessarily like the opposing force of the turtle, of the creator of
The
everything, but
turtle. Oh God.
he is unopposing force. A force of evil, where Maturin was a force of good, like another
Good.
thing,
Yeah.
good versus evil.
Yeah.
Um,
Even though the
so he
turtle,
did have
he isn't always nice. He's kind of a dick.
the turtle, yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, ah, whatever. And they're like, hey, we need help here. And he's like, oh, go
It's
away.
these insignificant human beings.
These little insects, go away. It's just, yeah, no, that's kind of one of my issues with the story is this kind of, it's more of that cosmic thing.
Yeah, it doesn't dive too deep into that. We get obviously the ritual of Chud or whatever it's
Yeah.
called. I mean, which is really like the thing that ends up killing Pennywise.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, there are some some of that supernatural kind of cosmic horror that goes on. Certainly, the scene with, is it Bill and who goes into whatever, like they're like floating alongside the turtle. It's Bill and somebody else, right?
It's either like
Richie.
Bill or Mike, because I think if I remember, Mike's the one who gets him to do the ritual, and they see the turtle.
Initially, yeah, I think so.
Maybe it's Ben. I don't remember.
It's one of them, like when they're adults and they go back and Bill's like floating through space trying to like get the turtle to help them or something to like actually kill him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a little strange, I guess. But the turtle does play a bigger part in King's
Yeah. Or war.
metaverse, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my thing is, I don't know if the story really needed the turtle, but it works mostly for the story, so I'm not complaining too much.
No, I think in a book this big, there's a couple things that obviously in this one people can nitpick. And when you say it's one of your favorite books of all time, there's always going to be the people that are like, even that one scene, and I'm like, well, yeah, but um, it's a large book, so you're going to have some of that, I guess. And not everything is going to be perfect. You're not reading a 250 page like extremely polished novel, and this was when King was at like the top of his. Like there was no editor was going to be like, you can't do that, Stevie.
Yeah, no, it's like, Steven, baby, honey, what is this? Like there's one particular scene that everyone's like, what the fuck? But
Yeah.
I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But as Stephen King likes to do, he likes to show that it's not just evil monsters that are terrifying, but human beings can be really terrifying as well. There's some real sickos in this book. My God.
My lord, there are.
Yeah, King's really good at writing these just really. You know, how we were talking earlier. He can create these very plausible people. He creates these very plausible, just evil people.
Yeah, Henry Bowers.
Yeah, Henry Bowers. That dude's a maniac. He's just like he kills Mike's dog at one point, and you're like, okay, buddy.
He like Henry Bowers. The whole like relationship between Henry Bowers and the Losers Club could be its own like 300 or 400 page novel in itself. Like he's that hateable. But
Yeah,
in this book, it's all just going on in the background of this other massive thing that all these kids are dealing with, which is kind of
yeah. I mean,
crazy.
I guess what I enjoyed is the back and forth between when they were kids and when they were adults. I like the history of Derry, like the fire, the oh man, like the massacre, the like the cycles, how it explores how it kind of influences the town. But yeah, I mean, I get it's a thick boy, so not everything in this big boy is gonna be like perfect. But I kind of wish that it could have been more subtle. I guess the more cosmic stuff.
Yeah, I guess the saving grace with that is that there wasn't a lot of it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree
You
with
know,
that.
it was minimal in the grand scheme of this massive tome of a book.
Yeah, I mean, though most of it's really good. I like the world building in this book. I mean, just the town of Derry feels like a real place. It's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And the people in it feel real, like down to the police officers and the pharmacist being, somebody that all the townspeople know and have a relationship with, and he knows what everybody's parents need for medication without even having to use a computer. Like it's just little stuff like that that adds to the the whole atmosphere of this small town feel that King seems to know so well. I mean the what's the big, festival called where
Oh
Adrian
shoot.
Mellon gets
Um,
whatever. It's like I don't remember what it's called.
I don't remember either. If anyone wants to mention it down below, feel free.
You know
But
what I'm talking about though.
I know what you're
Like
talking
an
about.
annual festival.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like their Halloween thing.
It's something like that.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a interesting it's just I love the lore and the history of the town. I guess is one of my favorite aspects of this book.
Yeah, 100%.
There's even some references to some of King's other work. Dick Halloran shows up in this book for you're just like, oh, hello there.
Yes.
You're like, oh, hello there. Wow, nice to see you there. Aren't you in another book? And then Christine shows up. Even I totally forgot about that until I was looking it up recently.
Isn't like doesn't like Patrick Hostetter drive up in
Yeah,
Christine or
yeah,
something?
or
Or is that just in
Pennywise
the
as
movie?
him. Admittedly, I've never read Christine because I'm like, I don't know. I just an evil car is kind of one step too far for me.
I haven't read it either.
I, I mean,
And
it could be good, but
I
I'm just
hear everybody say that going into it, they think the same thing, and King somehow pulls it off. So I have to read it at some point.
though I guess that kind of cutting back to it. There is sort of that same thing. I mean, it works in this book for some reason, but like every time I've seen it on screen, it's almost laughable when they're adults. Like there's almost an absurdity to it. While in the book, it's more like it feels more believable. Like what do you make of that?
I think again that kind of plays into the whole adults turning a blind eye to it. It always reminded me when I was reading this of like, when a kid would tell their parents about, or when, I'm thinking about like telling my parents about a nightmare or something, or seeing a monster in the closet or something in the closet, and it feels so real. And
Mm-hmm.
you just you tell your parents, and they're like, "Oh, it's okay. It's just it's there's no such thing as monsters." And like that, and then like he took that and he's like, "But what if it was real?"
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it is, and
Yeah.
like was killing people, and like that's terrifying
And
as a child.
it's the childhood naivete what the the Pennywise is feeding on.
100%, yeah. Like Georgie just come down to the circus in this. There's not a circus in the sewer, dude. Even a 7-year-old knows that. But he's like, I can smell the popcorn. I can smell the. Can you hear it? Can you hear it, Georgie? Like,
Here's a
and he
balloon.
goes, here's a balloon.
And he's like, "Oh,
So yeah, I
yes."
think I think that the fact that it's real makes that more scary because it does seem insane. And that scene, like in the movie, and it happens in the book too, where they're all just like freaking out because all their fortune cookies are like crazy stuff's coming out of their fortune cookies,
Yeah,
and they're
there's like
like
an eye and
banging the table and throwing plates everywhere. And then the lady comes in, she's like, "What's going on?" And then there's like that freeze frame second where they all stop and they're like, "This is insane." Like that scene's hilarious.
mm-hmm. Yeah, like the Pennywise likes to toy with his victims before he can't just kill them. It's like you said earlier. Like,
No,
what were you saying?
he seasons them. He seasons them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna eat." And yeah, I love how at the end they're like, "Oh shit, it's got babies. We gotta kill these things."
Oh, that was the best. Ben's like, "I got this," and then Ben is just like running around stamping on like tiny spiders and like crushing eggs.
Oh my god, yeah, it's crazy. Um, but yeah, another thing I like is almost again it's one of those weird things where it always works better with the kids when it comes to adaptations because like it's more believable that this thing would prey on a child's imagination. There's something pure about it, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it makes you angrier because you're like, these are just innocent kids, like, and
Well,
you're just preying on them. I
mostly
think like
innocent. There's some real twisted bastards in this.
there are, but Georgie though,
Yeah, no,
Georgie,
Georgie's
like,
a good kid. I'm sure he's a good kid. We don't even really meet him. He's just kind of, and that line where he's like, "And Bill never saw him again." I'm like, shit, man,
yep,
fuck.
that's Stephen King spoiling stuff before it's still somehow being able to make it interesting.
Yeah.
'Cause you're like, well, now I got to know how the heck this happens, but I think he makes it hurt more because there's those moments where Bill's sick and Georgie just wants him to help him, and Bill's like kind of a d bag to him a little bit,
Yeah.
and that just like eats at him for the rest
Mm-hmm.
of his life because he's
Mm-hmm.
like, all he wanted was help building a boat, and like he did help him, but he made some comments that definitely would have hurt Georgie's feelings, and like Bill just can't let that go. And one of the most devastating things I remember in this book, also again a thing that's just like super real, was after Georgie died and Bill Bill's parents were just like, King described it as just being like icy cold to him, and
Mm-hmm.
like wouldn't interact with him anymore. Like they would just like sit like zombies and watch TV and just kind of like go through the motions of life because they were both just like all three of them were just trying to deal with this. The wife wouldn't let the husband take anything out of Georgie's room, and they got mad at Bill when he went in there because they wanted everything to just stay the way it was. And like that grief that they were going through was so visceral, and just like I felt so horrible for Bill, who was just like a kid trying to be a kid as much as he could after dealing with all this.
Mm-hmm.
And like his parents just like unable to move past losing Georgie and not having anyone to blame for it.
Yeah, and I remember. It kind of reminds me of Stand By Me with the main character of that story. When his
I haven't
older
read that
brother.
one.
You haven't read that one? Uh, oh man. Well, I mean, it's not really a big spoiler, I guess, but his older brother died. The main character's older brother died, but this was before the story, so it's kind of a similar thing. Like his parents just are completely just devastated by him dying, and they kind of just ignore this other one. They ignore their other son. And
Yeah,
it's
like I
it's
have
really
no
sad.
idea how I would feel as a parent in that scenario, but I can imagine it would be probably. I mean, everybody has to go through a grief process, and it just looks different for everybody. And I remember that just being like a hard part to read about because I felt so bad for Bill and like what he was going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was trying to engage with his parents, and they were just like, "Yeah, go do something, buddy." You know?
Yeah, it's like the turtle. He's just like, go away. I'm doing something. Yeah, I mean, I like how all the kids have their respective just crap that they're going through. You know, like Ben's fat, Bev, her dad's freaking maniac. Eddie's mom's a maniac. Richie, he's doing okay. You know, his parents are all right. You know, not crazy.
Yeah, he's just a goofball.
Yeah, I mean Ben's parents are pretty cool too, but his he's not treated very well because he's fat.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many scenes like the
Also, Mike gets picked on because he's black.
yeah.
Even though.
Yeah, they all are going through something
Mm-hmm.
individually, and it kind of is what begins to like build the bonds of the Losers Club. Like they have that central foe of Henry Bowers
Mm-hmm.
to come together around because what, three or four of them met because I think Bill and Ben were playing down in the Barrens, and Mike gets chased by Bowers down to there, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, like the rock fight, like the Bowers enemy is like what brought them together as a Losers Club, and then they subtly started to realize like they had this massive foe that they
Mm-hmm.
all shared and felt so alone before sharing these wild events. Like, I mean, seeing Georgie in your basement or seeing crazy stuff, like not being able to tell anybody about that stuff had to have been driving them crazy. And then they found each other and they're like, this is happening to me too. And this happened to me.
I think what makes the book believable is that, like we mentioned earlier, it is kind of cutting back and forth. They're remembering it as they come back. You know, um, I mean, I know why the movies didn't do it that way because that would just be kind of, well, not confusing. There have been non-linear films before, but I mean, I think this would work better as like a. It's funny because they already did a mini series, but like a TV show maybe would probably be like the best way to do it, like properly, But I could be wrong
No, I
because.
think I mean, I enjoyed the book's aspect of switching back and forth a lot. Um, it created a lot of cliffhangers,
Yeah, it
but it also
feels.
allowed us to like flesh out the characters even more.
Yeah, it feels more believable to me. It's not because like the miniseries made this mistake, and I feel like the movies did too. Is that they split them, you know, and and if it's just this one half and another half, I don't think it works quite as well because they're just gonna be like, well, the kids feels more believable than the adults. I mean, when you think about it, the adults going up against this monster clown, like I mentioned earlier, it's almost kind of absurd.
Yeah, it is absurd. It literally is.
Yeah, even if I
Um,
remember, even there in the book, they're like, "What? Like this is so ridiculous." I think I think Richie's the one who's like, "This is stupid. Like, what is this?" And they're like,
Everyone except for Stan.
"Oh yeah, that's right."
Stan knew.
No, Stan's the one who's like, "This is stupid." Like, he's the he's the very rational, like this can be logically explained, and all of them are like, oh no, man, this is real.
Except when he got the phone call as an adult, he was
Yeah.
like, nope, because
Yeah,
he's
he
the one that
noped out
just
of that. He's like, yeah, he's poor Stan. He's just, oh god, it's even worse. His poor guy. He didn't have a chance.
no.
Oh yes, I totally forgot about Stan. Stan, he also gets he gets mocked because he's Jewish, I think, because something
Yes.
happens.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, he gets made fun of for that, and then he's also like you said, the logical one, but he's also the most cowardly one, and he he is the most willing to just be obstinate in saying that this isn't happening, it can't possibly happen, but he deep down he knows
mm-hmm. Yeah.
like it's real, but he just like doesn't want to believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he. Yeah, I mean, how it's kind of like, you ever watch Scooby-Doo when you were growing up?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Velma of the group. He's like, there's a logical explanation here, and then it turns out, no, there's not.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Bill's like there is an unexplanation.
there's
I
an
don't know if it's logical.
explanation. There is one. It's just not logical. And yeah, it's not fun doing that. Yeah, what are some of your favorite parts from the book that you really enjoyed?
Well, I think the obviously the Georgie scene
Mm-hmm.
is just such a tone setter for the book, and it just creates the vibe that the entire book is going to like kind of withstand for the rest of it. And so I think that's definitely one of my favorite parts. um One of my favorite kind of scenes of the Losers Club, like coming together, there's a couple of them, is when they're trying to build a dam
Mm-hmm.
randomly, like just a classic boyhood summer project. Like, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
try to stop the stream from moving. We're gonna build a
Mm-hmm.
dam, and uh, and then Ben is kind of just trying to assimilate into the group still, and they're all getting to know each other and their strengths, weaknesses, likes, dislikes, and Ben's like, "Oh, I know how to do that." And then he literally builds a dam that like floods the entire Barrens, and they all get in trouble with the police. Like, that was a group
Yeah.
solidifying moment for me, and
Yeah.
they were like, and even the cop was just like, "You built this, son?" He's like, "Yeah, it was easy. I saw how to do it in a book." He's like, "Don't ever do it again, but this is really impressive." So I like that. That was a really fun moment for me, and like a moment where I feel like Ben, because Ben's my favorite of the kids.
Yeah,
Like, he's my
I like
favorite
Ben as
character.
well. He's very good. I think my favorite's
But that
Beverly, though.
I mean, you can't go wrong with any of them. They all have. The only one I couldn't picture someone picking as their favorite might be Stan, but
Yeah.
I still like Stan.
Poor Stan.
But Ben, like, he felt a part of it in that moment, and like proud of himself, like not like a weirdo that just reads books in the library. He's like, "Oh, this stuff, I put it to use." And then another one of my favorite parts was Ben just kind of taking control of building their clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
He just like knew how to do it, and I think even Richie or someone was like, "Dude, how do you know how to do all this stuff?" He's like, "I don't know, it just makes sense in my head."
Yeah, if I remember, he
Um,
becomes an architect.
yeah, he does. Yeah, like a world-renowned architect.
Mm-hmm. I really,
So those are a couple of my favorite parts.
um, yeah, those are really good. I like a lot of my favorite moments is when they're just hanging out and goofing off, and you know, when they go into the creepy house, and they're taking it on
Yeah,
the first time. I don't know if I'd say favorite part, but one that stuck with me for a lot was the fire chapter when Mike's dad tells him about when he was in Um, that fire.
The Kitchen Ironworks, is that what it is? Or
Yeah, I
something
think
like that?
so. Something like that.
Oh
Um,
no, it was the fire at the it was like a nightclub.
yeah, the Black Nightclub. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. And like, I like how they kind of picked how they I also like how they sort of connect the dots to Pennywise, and that like he's always been there.
Yeah, that was a lot of Mike, right? I mean, Mike's
Mm-hmm.
research over the years after they all left was like, I figured it out. Like he's the one that figured it out in terms of it happening around every 27 years, and there usually being some like big event happening that leads up to the beginning of like another trend of missing children.
Yeah, I like how it's almost it's said in the book. It kind of I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it's like how it is the town, and the town is it. You know, like
Yeah,
when they finally defeat it for good, Pennywise for good. Like there's this big flood that just
yeah,
destroys the
like the middle
town.
of the town just like falls apart, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was like a crater.
Um, I know King struggles with endings, but also I really like the ending of this. I mean, there's some people who might think that the climax is overblown. I disagree, but you know, it works fine. But I like the ending a lot. It's very good. You know, it
Yeah,
bookends very nicely, which
I
King
agree.
struggles with. You know, there's a couple of them. It's not like The Stand where he just kind of wrote himself into a corner and he's like, screw it.
Yeah, it's. I think King it's a mixture of he gets too bad of a rap for endings, but also kind of earns it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read a ton of really bad endings yet. Like the more renowned books, I think that have like Under the Dome, I think is one that's like people love like 90% of it and then hate 10% of it. I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah. I mean, The Stand for me
Some
is
people had
really.
like, did you like The Stand or no?
Oh no, I really enjoy The Stand. It's just the climax of that book is just so like what the fuck. I mean, the ending isn't bad, but it's the climax of the book that's really just like, ah man.
Yeah, I can see that. But no, I agree with it. I was pretty much I enjoyed the ending for the most part. There's some nitpicky things, I think. The
Well,
one
sure, yeah.
scene, obviously.
The one scene, yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
I mean,
I guess my
it
only
just
real issues with the book is like the stuff with the turtle, which is like okay, I can handle, but I kind of wish that wasn't in the book, and the scene.
yeah. The scene could have been done a different way. I just don't get
Yeah,
why that made it through. Like no editors were like, I don't know, man, like this is pretty weird.
yeah, and even Steve. And I like how King later decides, you know what, I'm gonna double down on this. This is a good idea, and he's like, you guys were all fine with watching kids getting murdered, but this scene, oh, that's too far, Uncle Stevie. You know.
Yeah.
Which I get what he's saying, but at the same time, like, dude, this is not the hill to die on, man.
He can die on pretty much whatever hill he wants at this point.
It's just,
He's never been afraid to share his opinions on things, especially once the invention of Twitter came
oh
around.
my gosh, yeah, no, there's some fun, there's some fun, like, he picks the weirdest hills to die on, like the Shining movie, and the scene from it where you're like, what, you know?
Yeah. But hey, I mean, it's not the. I mean, like I said earlier, there's people that are like, "That's one of your favorite books, even with that scene," and I'm like, "Yes," because listen, this journey and this story of friendship and like coming of age is the best that I've read yet. I
I
know
agree.
there's the biggest contender that I've heard is, I believe, Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. I have not read that yet,
I haven't read that either. Heard it's
but it's
very
the
good.
one that everyone says is like the only one that really contends with this book, and the reason, and Mike's book review says this frequently when he talks about it, and it's true. It's because you're not just getting one coming of age story; you're getting seven. Like, we are spending so much time with every single member of the Losers Club,
Mm.
and genuinely, like, I genuinely felt like I was part of the Losers Club and knew all of these people by the end of this book.
Hmm?
And I was so sad when this book was over the first time. Like, it it just devastated me that, like, I didn't have it to come back to. I remember reading it and being like 300 pages into it, which is like longer than some other novels that I read,
Yeah.
and being like, yes, I still have like 900 pages left. You know,
I
I
mean,
didn't want it to end.
again, it's not that difficult of a read either. I mean, it's long, but it doesn't feel dragged out. Like I mean, Under the Dome. I know we kind of talked about this. I just don't love that book in general, and it does have that problem where it kind of drags out a little bit. But it does not feel dragged out. I mean, there's some moments like a couple maybe. Like I would probably like if I edited this, I'd probably be like maybe downplay the cosmic stuff and like maybe not do that scene and rest of it's top quality in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I was reading Wikipedia earlier, and he was writing this one for like 5 years, so he put a lot into this one. And I don't know if the whole like kind of inception of it, based around like the Three Billy Goats Gruff. Did you know like that's like where his idea for this kind of
No, I did
originated?
not know this.
He's shared about it in interviews and stuff before. He wanted that idea of, I think he said he was literally like walking across a bridge or something, like a little
Mm-hmm.
bridge in a park, and had like some heels on his shoes that like made noises.
Mm-hmm.
Or he was either him or his wife he was walking with, and the clip clopping on the bridge made him think of the Three Billy Goats Gruff, and that kind of like started his idea of like this troll like thing terrorizing a town, and then it turned into Pennywise living underneath the town's entire sewer system instead of just like a bridge. And so it kind of just like spiraled from there. But I thought that was a really cool just like inception for this idea that ended up being like you said, probably definitely his magnum opus of standalones for sure.
Yeah. Well,
Excluding the Dark
I
Tower.
was about to say either this or the Dark Towers is magnum opus. I don't know yet.
I would say it's the Dark Tower. I think he would probably say it's the Dark Tower too, but this is definitely his most well known, obviously, work. I've
Yeah.
always thought it was really cool. Like, imagine just being Stephen King and creating a staple figure of the horror genre, you know?
I mean, like, in horror is an interesting genre because I'm like, there's only like Edgar Allan Poe's pretty well known, H.P. Lovecraft is pretty well known, and Stephen King is just like he's end all be all of it. I mean, there's plenty of other great horror writers who aren't Stephen King, in my opinion, but yeah, man. I mean, really, this was one of the books aside from like 11/22/63, which might actually be my favorite of his work. I'm not sure yet, but it might actually be. It competes with like a couple others, but I think it is among his best because just like there's so much in this that I enjoy, like the world, how it goes back and forth through the narrative. I really like the personalities of everybody, and like he gives like special attention to certain characters, like Patrick, who's also just demented.
Oh yeah.
The kid is. I also like all of the. I like his sort of commentary on childhood and the sort of magic of childhood, and not just literally, but like the metaphorical, and how that can be twisted, but also how that can bring people together.
Yeah, 100%. Like just the pretending and imagination of children at play, like without the supervision of adults, is it is a magical thing to
Mm-hmm.
like witness. And like I said, I just them just going around Derry and doing stuff in the summer just reminded me of the silly things that like my friends and I used to just do running around this. We had this big meadow by my house, and there was like a crabapple tree there and these little backwoods, and we would always just come up with these like weird schemes and like things going on just all like in our brains, you know. We would have so much fun just biking around this area and just like messing around for hours in the summer, and it felt like that. This book felt like
Mm-hmm.
that with a
Yeah.
lot of real stuff going on in the background.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it definitely captures that feeling of what it's like to be a kid. And Stephen King is very good at that. I don't know how he does it, even though he's an older man. Or well, he was oh god, maybe late 40s, early 50s. What was he born?
This was released on my birthday in 1986. So I don't know how old he would have been then.
Oh, he was 39. I just looked it up. Yeah, no, it's sort of I mean, there are a lot of Dark Tower references in here as well. I think the turtle appears in the Dark Tower. It's been forever since I read Dark Tower.
Yes. Yeah, that's like because my sister actually, I bought her this book. I think it might have been 2 years ago now, for Christmas, and because I had read it just a couple months prior, and like I really wanted her to read it because I wanted to commission. She paints, and I wanted to commission her to do a painting for me on like a really large canvas based on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought her the book, and she just finished it. I think yesterday is when she was texting me, and she said the same thing about the cosmic stuff, and I was like, it makes sense more if you're like a massive King fan because it kind of ties into like his, multiverse, uh, which the turtle is a big part of, but it also can be taken or leaving. Like you just don't have to pay that much attention to it, if you
Well,
don't want
sure,
to. It
yeah. I
doesn't
mean,
affect the story.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think the story still holds up even with the weird cosmic stuff. Which I mean, which Stephen King was was hitting the cocaine pretty hard. He has given the story that apparently his drug addiction was so bad, he does not remember writing Cujo. Still blows my mind to this day.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's another one I haven't read yet.
Oh, that might be one of his darkest books that he's written.
Really?
Yeah, really. And I mean, I'm saying a lot. There's a lot of dark stuff in this. Like Patrick Hofstadter is a maniac, and like it's
He is
supposed.
insane. That's
Yeah,
someone we haven't talked much about yet, but he has got a lot of mental issues.
yeah, that's a good way. That's one way to put it. He's just, oh man. There's a whole chapter dedicated to him, and then he has this one fear, leeches, and um, then Pennywise turns into leeches and kills him, which is pretty
Yep.
disturbing. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? Fuck him.
Yeah, I wasn't too upset about that. He was just a dastardly man,
Yeah,
young man rather,
yeah,
even a kid.
yeah,
Like, isn't it that scene with his brother?
yeah. He killed his brother. He
He
kills a
kills his
bunch of
infant brother.
animals. Dude's just he thinks he's the only real person. So he's twisted.
Yeah, he's like wandering around killing animals and like stuffing them into like refrigerators in the woods.
Yeah.
Like,
Even Henry
he's sick.
is even Henry's like, dude, calm down, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said earlier, that even just the plot line between the Losers Club and the Bowers gang is there's enough substance there for
Mm-hmm.
like its own story. Because I hated hated Henry Bowers so much
Yeah, I
throughout this
mean,
entire book, and
I mean, I didn't really like him well, I thought he was a pretty reprehensible individual. But at the same time, I kind of felt like pity for him, if that makes sense. Because like his
I
dad's
yeah.
also just a maniac.
Yeah, but so was Beverly's.
That's true. That's true.
And
Um,
she was a great kid.
yeah, she's a good kid, even though her dad's a freaking maniac. There's also that one scene where like Pennywise as her dad's basically like, "Oh, I beat you because like I was into you," and it was like, ugh, you know.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things that I didn't really realize until I read this book is Pennywise itself does not get a ton of page time
No, yeah,
compared to like Bowers and other like Pennywise itself is not actually on the page and having dialogue very often throughout this book.
yeah. It's more like kind of going back to Salem's Lot. His influence looms over the book, even though he's not in it all that much. He's
Yeah. I think that adds to the terror of it
yeah,
for me. Like it was never overblown. Like anytime Pennywise was even remotely close to actually being on the page and not just the idea of him, like I was glued to the page.
yeah. You're like, get out of there now. Even though when Henry and his friends got murdered by him, I was like, eh. Still really messed up, but I was like, eh.
I think that happens a lot with Stephen King adaptations that become movies specifically is a lot of times the movies probably intentionally miss the point and just kind of like Pet Cemetery, the original one was even like this a lot, which I love as a movie. But it was not really about like the zombified version of Church or Gage. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
more about psychological terrors of like what you would do in this situation. And but it became like because that wouldn't translate well to like a gory horror movie, you know. And so like in the movies, Pennywise is there a lot. Like Skarsgård is on the screen a lot. He's like the star of the show, and
Well,
that's not
yeah.
how it is in the book.
Well, yeah, it's an iconic character, you know. Plus, with movies, they kind of make changes. But I agree with you. Yeah, it's definitely more. Um, it's how do I put this? Like his presence looms more than him just actually showing up. You know.
Yeah,
Now the miniseries actually didn't do a bad job with that sort of influence. And in the new movies, it's kind of like he's just showing up, gonna murder everybody.
yeah. There was one scene the creepiest scene in the new movies was for me was that girl under the bleachers.
Oh yeah.
That scene freaked me out. Still
Oh
like
man.
as an adult. Where
Yeah.
he's counting out, like he's counting down for her to like blow out the candle. Like
Yeah.
one, two, and he just like bites her head off.
Oh god. Yeah. He's. It's weird with the movies because they've never quite gotten it right. Like maybe give it to like Mike Flanagan or something, and maybe like he would get it right. I don't know, but um. Oh, the 2017 version was pretty good. I thought.
Yeah,
Though
yeah,
like
I agree with that.
though like it would sometimes undercut the like really creepy stuff with like really goofy stuff. It felt kind of weird, like that New Kids on the Block scene. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like, okay, that's funny, but like, really, like,
No, well, I watched it. I watched both of the new ones again last year with my wife after I re-listened to the audiobook, and I was just telling her it's like this with almost every, and it's why a lot of book lovers say the book's always better than the movie is it's just impossible to have the relationship with these characters that I had in the book in the movie. You don't get to
That's
spend the
true.
amount of time with them. They don't go into the backstories really of like they kind of do in the movie, but it's still
I
not
thought
to
they nailed the
me
bits
as
with Beverly's dad.
yeah, like that's one that they nail. And
And
I think because they
in the miniseries, it's more like this fucking thin-looking guy is like, oh, "Hey, Bev, I worry about you a lot," and he sounds like Jimmy
yeah.
Stewart. I'm like, "What the hell?"
No, I feel like you just can't get to know the characters. And another reason for that is because reading is just a much more personal experience. Like
Well, yeah.
a movie is telling you, it's showing you what you're supposed to see and feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like a book, you paint these pictures in your heads and you make your own assumptions and connections to your life and just I don't know, it's a much more personal experience to the characters at least.
Yeah, most definitely. I guess we can. I mean, we can talk about the characters some more. I mean, the villains in this book are pretty disturbing. Like Henry Bowers, we talked about a little bit. Patrick Hofstetter, also Tom, Beverly's husband, which makes me
Oh
feel
yeah.
even worse for Beverly because I'm like, oh, she gets out of this one abusive situation and yeah, she's back again.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of antagonistic forces at work throughout
Mm-hmm.
this book. And they're all pretty formidable. I mean, again, a lot of it is just is the trauma of childhood coming back. I mean, even Eddie like grows up to marry a woman that is basically a carbon copy of his mother. Like,
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of discussion about trauma and how like it's really hard to overcome trauma. Like it's really tough if you don't have the right support system.
yeah, and even
Because
if you do, it's still something that lingers. I feel like it's just a part of you. I mean, even though Eddie knew, like there was that moment where he realized his inhaler was just water, you know, and everything that everybody was saying about his mom was true, and that she was just like a hypochondriac,
mm,
and there really wasn't anything wrong with him. Like
yeah, his mom
that
is
scene,
insane.
that scene like should have changed the way that Eddie acted, but we see when he's an adult, like he's still got a wife now that plans out all his medications, and he's taking all these like extreme amounts of like vitamins and like it's like he's just got this crazy like aversion to sickness of any kind.
Yeah, it's he's a I think it's also because he's used to it. There's also that kind of because like I've heard because I've read some stuff about like people who've gone through like abuse. People who were abused when they were kids. They have they're abused when they like get married, and it's not necessarily that they want to. It's just like they're kind of used to it after a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what happened with Beverly,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was actually
like
just
you
gonna
were
bring it up
saying.
with Beverly because she goes through the exact same thing. I love her friend who's like, you should have dumped his ass a long time ago.
Oh
It's
yeah.
great.
Her friend's an all-star.
her friend, that's a great friend. That's a keeper right there, man. I mean, she's like,
Yeah.
you get away from him. And she's like, I finally did it. And she's like, oh, good for you. And this woman's a G. Like, Tom like comes and starts like beating her ass, and she's like not gonna tell him. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like fuck with this lady. All right.
Yeah. And then the psychopath freaking follows her
Oh my god, yeah. And then
to
of
to
course,
Derry.
it just easily takes him and's like, hey, come work for me. And he's like, okay. He's also
Yeah, because
just
he's the one that ends up taking Bill's wife, right?
yeah, yeah,
Down to the deadlights.
yeah. He's also just vicious, evil person.
Yeah, I it's always the back to the character work. Like it's the realness of it. Like
Hmm.
there's just people like this in the world. Like it's not. It seems maybe slightly hyperbolic, but not really. I mean, there are people like Henry Bowers. There's kids like Henry Bowers. I remember kids like that in high school. Maybe not,
Hmm.
carving kids' stomachs and stuff like that, but
Well,
they
yeah.
acted the same way that he did. And there's men that act the same way Tom Rogan did, and it makes them feel so much more real.
Yeah, and it's not like they're like car. It's not just like they're like cardboard cutouts or anything like that. It's like they have issues too. Now, Patrick, he's just disturbed. I'll just put it that way. But like Henry has like his dad, and like if I remember right, I think Tom Rogan has like a difficult relationship with his mom, and
I don't
that's
remember that, but you might be right.
kind of why he's a dickhead to Beverly all the time. it
Yeah.
makes me think of this. I love how they condensed Tom's role in the miniseries. It's just like this guy, and he's all like being a dick, and then she's like, "Fuck you, I'm leaving," and then he leaves, and he just goes like, "Don't leave me, Bev, Bev." It's it's so funny. I'm just like, dude, oh, it's so
That's the kind of stuff I was talking about earlier. Like there's some like corny like dialogue and stuff that you just kind of have to look past and accept it for what it is with the miniseries.
yeah. I mean, I like how Bill has like a stutter, like he can't talk very well. And he overcomes that. He becomes basically like Stephen King in our world. He's like a famous writer, and
Yeah, horror writer.
yeah, he becomes a famous horror writer, and he ends up going back, and he's like, well, okay,
Yeah, it's funny. Like I said earlier, the professions that they all grow up fit their personalities
yeah,
so well.
yeah. Also, I hate how they screwed over Mike in the new movies because I'm like they basically just turn him into the token black guy, and I'm like, no, he has like a important thing in the. Don't even bother bringing him back for the second one then, and then he comes back and he does what he does. I'm like, it doesn't work after the first one. You have to establish that.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
frustrating.
I agree.
At least in the miniseries, they kept it mostly true. Like he's really interested in the history of the town, and he's the one who stays. So it's believable that he stays.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really like the linchpin to the entire adult side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's the reason that they all are back there in the first place, as adults at least.
Yeah. This novel's also really funny too. Parts like with the Rock War.
Oh yeah.
Also, some of the stuff that
That
like
was,
it says is pretty funny. It's just like there's one part he's like, he's literally like, I'm the only survivor of a dying planet. I've come here to rob all the women, rape all the men, and do the peppermint twist. I'm
yeah,
like,
like
this
what?
dude's a maniac. I'm like, what? There's also kind of there's also the one where they're like playing Monopoly and they're just making fun of Stan because he's Jew and he's winning and Stan's winning and Ben's just like, good lord, I wish I were Jewish. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Um, yeah, I mean, it's such a great story, really. Um, there's so much to talk about, like Henry Bowers, dude's a maniac. And all again, I really like how King can create these really vivid people.
It's one of his strong suits for sure, and almost all of his novels. I mean, I think reading Stephen King has in part made me realize that although I love a good plot, character work is probably the most important aspect of a story to me in fiction, and it's a massive part of the story.
Yeah, I agree.
If I think, I haven't read a ton of science fiction, but that's kind of what worries me a little bit about the bigger sci-fi series that are more based around the concepts and the ideas and the plot rather than the individuals, because I'm somebody that doesn't like, I'm not a guy that can like quote you movie lines or recite to you exactly how a book plays out. That's not how I roll. It's not how my brain works. But one thing that always sticks with me is the way that characters in a book made me feel,
Yeah,
you know?
I also like how King, and this is something that a lot of the movies miss as well, but King can make these really innocuous things creepy and suspenseful, like balloons, for instance. And
Yes.
like, I don't know how he managed to make "We All Float Down Here" spooky, but King did it. I don't know. He must have, I don't know how he did it.
Well, if everybody could do it, he wouldn't be as big as he is, I suppose.
That's fair. Yeah. It's, it's yeah, it's interesting how he does that. And again, I really like how Pennywise's presence is filled over in the novel, even though like he's not like in it all the like he's not in it a lot of the time.
No, but like we talked about earlier, that kind of adds to the whole, I don't know, the enigmatic nature of him, and this like the terror that there's a lot in this book, partially because it's massive, where an event will happen that's very tense and very high stakes, and then there would just be like a couple hundred pages where King's not like lulling you to sleep, but it's it's just day of the life stuff that they're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with, minor troubles compared to Pennywise and like, the town at large and people's lives, and then you just get caught back into this comfortable, natural swing of things and reading about little Richie over here and a little Bev over here and a little Bill over here and then all of them together here and then this and then that and then boom, something else happens. And you're like, oh, I forgot. This was like super intense. Like that kept happening throughout this book. Um,
Yeah.
and it like added to the experience because you're just like used to hanging out with them, and a lot of King's books, and this one included, I could just read about people doing stuff throughout their day, and like he just has a way of making that even enjoyable. And then all of a sudden it's like boom, back to it.
Yeah,
Someone's missing.
I remember Mike from Mike's book reviews pointed this out. He said King's really good at making like he's good at like just capturing normal life and making that interesting some way because you're so compelled by these characters.
Yeah, it all comes back to the character work, I think. And if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not attached to the characters, then I don't care to read about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, let's get on with the plot. But if I love the characters, I'll just hang out with them while they build a freaking fort or a clubhouse,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm. It's I just love the friendship as well. It's just great. Well, I guess we should talk about this real quick to get it out of the way. The scene, as we've been calling it,
Yeah.
if that's all right. I feel like I don't want to talk about it, but I feel it would be kind of a disservice if we didn't talk about it. Um, but yeah, I guess we can just get it out of the way. So yeah, there's a controversial scene in this book where they're in the sewer, and I guess if I remember right, they do it because they want to be like closer to each other or something. I don't remember all of it, but they end up like banging each other. Well, not banging each other. They bang Beverly, which I'm not gonna
Yeah,
defend it here.
it's so I think the concept of it was, if I'm remembering correctly, they had done the deed but not fully. Like they almost killed Pennywise and then he escaped as
Mm-hmm.
children, and this was kind of like the inciting incident that led to like their pact, but they were stuck, like they were lost down there. And I think, part of Pennywise's whole thing was to sow doubt in each other and to try to disassemble group unity because they were stronger when they were together.
Yeah.
And so I think what was happening was they had like really severely injured but not killed it, and they were lost in the sewer and couldn't get back out. And I think part of it was like they weren't unified at that moment. So like Bev's grand idea was to just like do this to get them like unified as a group again.
I
And I think there could have been other ways to go about it, but I think that was like the general premise of it because they had to figure out how to get back together so they could figure out a way out of there.
Yeah, I mean, King being King, he kind of doubled down on it, and he was basically like, "Well, why are you guys? You guys read about kids getting viciously murdered. You were fine with that, but this scene, oh, no, that's where you cross the line." I'm like,
Yeah.
I can see where he's coming from, but I still feel like taking a shower after reading that scene.
Yeah, it was I mean weird. It would have been weird even if they weren't 11. Um
Yeah, I mean,
it's just a straight, I mean, it didn't ruin the book for me, but it's something that like I don't know. I mean, it happened.
yeah, it happened. I guess it's
It's
not.
in there.
It's probably my least favorite part of the book, aside from the turtle stuff. But it's there. I mean, I still think this book is worth reading, despite that. I mean, it's a like I said, like we said earlier, it's a beautiful story, and but I would feel kind of disingenuous if we didn't bring it up. Even though I'd rather not talk about it, or I'll talk about it like very briefly, and then we'll just move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like that scene.
I think we checked that box. It's a thing that happened and it's in the book forever, and
And I don't like it,
you
but
got to get past
it
it.
is what it is.
It
Uh,
100% does not change my opinion that this book is worth reading.
yeah, it doesn't ruin. It's not like a part where I'm like, all right, I'm done putting this down. It's not like that. But it's it's there. I don't like it, but there's not really much I can do to change. I mean, I'm not Stephen King, or I'm not his editor either. So
Yeah, I'm not sure who was at this time.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Stephen King will be like, it was fine. I'm like, I personally don't like it. All right, that I'll just keep it as that, and we'll keep it there.
Yeah.
Oh man. Though there is a lot of messed up stuff in this. Like, there's one where a gay couple get beaten up, and then one of them gets thrown over, and then Pennywise is like, "Oh, hello there," and kills him.
You know what? I was confused because I'm pretty sure that that's how one of the new movies opens up. That's the first scene in one of the new movies.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Not the opening to the book, but that's like I think the first scene
Maybe one of the
in one of the
parts
new
in this
movies.
book opens up with that. I'm not sure. Let me see here.
Probably.
Let me see here. Hey, what? Stop that. There we go.
It's like the Dairy Boat Days or something. I can't remember the festival that happens.
Maybe. Let me look. I mean, this is a thick boy, so I mean, I wouldn't recommend this first. I would recommend, like, I don't know. I would recommend, like, The Shining or maybe some of his shorter works to get, like, your feet wet. But I mean, once you kind of understand his style, I would recommend reading it. Yeah, let me find here. Damn. I mean, like I said, this is a chunker, so do whatever.
Yeah, I can't figure out what the. It's irking me that I can't figure out what the name of that festival is.
Son of a bitch. Here, let me find it. Festival. Yeah.
Canal Days or something.
Maybe.
I
Well,
don't know. It's somewhat
I
irrelevant.
guess I'll ask you this. Did I already ask you earlier who's your favorite character in the book?
My favorite character is Ben.
Fair enough. I have a soft spot for
It's either
Mike.
Ben or Bill. Ben or Bill are my two favorites, but I think Ben overall.
Yeah, I really like. I also like Mike a lot because I'm kind of a nerd like Mike is. You know, I kind of like researching history and stuff like. I know Ben does that as well, but I like that about Mike. So I also like Beverly because you know she's just she doesn't have a good time of it.
No, I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where we get to feel empathy for the characters in different ways, and Bill's stutter that he deals with throughout is something that I always felt a lot of empathy towards him for because it's obviously something that he doesn't want to happen and can't necessarily control. Um, Ben had to an extent control over his weight, but as a kid, not necessarily that much. I mean, his parents were feeding him whatever, and genetics did what they did to him, and he, made alterations to his lifestyle like later in life. But just getting bullied for like your stature is like horrible, and to like he had just moved there. He didn't feel like he fit in anywhere and was just kind of this outcast and went to the library. Like I don't know, I really like resonated with Ben, not because those things happened to me, but I just felt a lot of empathy towards him.
Yeah, it's just it's also really sad at points too. Like most of the characters just have a bunch of really horrible stuff that happened to them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, God, there's so much to talk about here with this book, man. Um, yeah, Pennywise. I guess we already kind of talked about him, but like, what do you think of him throughout the story?
I think the times that he does make an appearance in the story are just, for lack of a better phrase, just like prime time television, but in book form. Like you explained, he's for the most part just this kind of looming presence throughout,
Mm-hmm.
and there's always this subtle anticipation of when Pennywise is going to make an appearance again, and again in what form he's going to make an appearance. And it's just as the children version of the characters are learning more stuff and working together to like figure out how they're going to fight this thing, and you see their confidence building and their unity in the group growing stronger, and then like something will happen and it will just like make it more real for them, and you'll see somebody panic or you'll see somebody like in trouble. And um I think especially again like you mentioned when they're kids, it's just so much more believable that these kids would be going through this. And
Mm-hmm.
before they really form the Losers Club, it's just terrifying to picture all of these kids going through this and feeling like so alone. Like, how
Yeah.
could you ever tell somebody that your sink exploded with blood, or that you saw a walking statue of Paul Bunyan that's 30 feet tall, like coming at, like, you just couldn't ever tell anybody this stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
that feeling of aloneness that they had, and just the terror of like even just opening a door, like it all the way back to when, not because of Pennywise, but Georgie, like one of the first things that like clicked with me in this book was when Bill told him to go downstairs to get the paraffin or whatever
mm-hmm.
to like wax the boat over,
Mm-hmm.
and he was so scared to go in the basement. you
Mm-hmm.
know
Yeah.
like I've
Yeah.
had that feeling. I know that feeling. You run up the stairs because you're worried someone's gonna grab your ankle while you're like at the top and drag you back. Like that's so real as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely, again, Stephen King is just so good at that childlike imagination. He's very good with that.
Yeah.
I guess another one of my favorite parts of this book is the friendship between all seven of them, and how they really they all need each other. And it's almost like they, again, kind of going back to the power of friendship thing, it's almost like they need each other in that way. They're their best selves when they're together. I think that's sort of King's message in the story.
Yeah, they learn that as they go along because I don't think any of them had that friendship before the Losers Club formed.
Mm-hmm.
They all were kind of like loners in their own right, you know?
Mm-hmm. And they all ended up finding each other.
Yeah. I mean, even Richie, like he's funny, he's like the class clown, but
Mm-hmm.
underneath all that, it's like he's using the sarcasm and the jokes to mask something, you know? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows somebody like that. Like, dude, why are you never serious? Like, it's time to be serious. They kind of pull that out of him. They get him to like accept. I think he was one of the last ones to even admit that he saw Pennywise when they were trying to figure out how Pennywise like appeared to them.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't Richie like deny that he ever experienced it? And then one day he was like, "Guys, I've been lying to you. Like, I saw him. I gotta tell you about it. It's driving me crazy."
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of yeah, I think really the main theme of this story is how we can triumph over evil as long as we have each other, really. We all come together.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I think that's kind of the mic drop that he's going for, you know? I could be wrong,
Yeah, and
but.
that's what Pennywise is trying to prevent the whole time. He's trying to pick them off,
Mm-hmm.
and not have them. That's why losing Stan as adults hurt so badly because Mike was adamant that they all had to come back, or it wouldn't be as surefire of a plan because they'd be a little bit weaker without him.
Mm-hmm. And sadly, Stan's fear got the better of him, or, well, something like that. I'm not entirely. Do you think it was just he was afraid, or do you think it was just, you know.
Oh yeah, I think he was terrified.
Possibly. Well, yeah. I mean, yes, I do think he was scared, but I don't know. Maybe Pennywise got to him?
Yeah, I just don't know if like I feel like he just didn't think it was possible, or he didn't want to relive that because when Mike called them all, none of them had any idea what he was talking about. Like it all started to come back to them, like as he started to mention things, and some of them were open to like remembering it, and some of them were like in extreme denial. And I think Stan was just like, "Yeah, I'll be there, Mike," and then his wife was just like, "Is everything okay, honey?" And he's like, "Yeah, everything's great. I'm just gonna go take a bath." And
Mm-hmm.
then he like went up to the bath and started a bath, and like he was like, "I'm not doing that."
It's just like later, and then he dies. It's very sad.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the saddest scenes in the book, aside from the Eddie Cochran episode and the Georgie episode.
Yeah, there's a little bit of circuity with the Georgie losing his arm, and didn't isn't that how Eddie
Yeah,
ends
something
up
like
dying
that.
too
Yeah,
towards the end?
I
He
think
gets his arm
so.
bitten off too.
Something like that. Either that or he gets impaled, or I might be thinking of the movies. But
I'm pretty sure he loses his arm and like bleeds out, and they can't take him out. They tried to take him and Audra both out of its lair, but they couldn't get Eddie out
yeah.
or something.
Um. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, I don't know. It's I think that's all of it. Or well, as much as I can think of at the moment. There's probably a bunch of stuff we're missing out on.
Oh,
But
we covered the gambit. I think we've been how long we've been chatting? Over an hour and a half, I think.
yeah, let me actually see.
But
Yeah, yeah.
I knew as soon as you invited me to talk about it that I would have no problems speaking for quite a while on this one because
Well,
it's
yeah, I
one of
mean,
those books that, impacted me heavily. Not only its length, but its impact on my life. I mean,
I
it's
love on
shaped how I read in a lot of ways.
on the back here. The Los Angeles Herald Examiner calls it the Moby Dick of horror novels. I can't say I disagree with that, even though I don't like Moby Dick all that much. That's beside the point.
I think that's an apt statement.
Yeah, it's just
It's
like,
it's a quintessential horror book,
yeah, I was looking
I
on
think.
TV tropes with this book, and I just love this. Hold on, let me. It's the This Is Your Premise on Drugs, and it's one of the highest profile books from near the end of King's addiction period. It has a lot of hallmarks of a cocaine idea. It's an extremely scattershot book full of digressions, irrelevant asides, dozens of side characters, truly bizarre sexual politics, and a high page count.
Jesus.
Though I think, though, to be honest, I think that book's not really giving it a lot of credit. It's I mean, I think the aside stuff isn't that bad. Now the scene, as we talked about earlier, wasn't that great, but that's beside the
Yeah.
point.
Well, if you don't have a connection to the characters, the aside stuff seems pointless, but I don't know how you could read this and not have a connection to the characters, personally.
But I guess I guess all that left to talk about is the end, and it's really good. Climax is just good enough, you know. I mean, it's not the Stand where he just literally drops a nuke on half the cast, and you're just like, that was it. The build up, it really is satisfying. And just the end, I just love the final line here. Let me find it here. Uh, let's see. Yeah, like the last line here, or so Bill Denborough sometimes thinks on those early mornings after dreaming, when he almost remembers his childhood and the friends with whom he shared it. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, it's fucking beautiful, man.
No,
So,
there's a lot of aspects of the end that worked really well. I think, when they were crawling out of the sewer and after the town flooded, they were all just kind of looking at each other. I think at one point they're like, "Did we do it? Like, is this it?" And I think they were all like, "I think we did." And then one of the most heart-wrenching parts was as they were all kind of like departing from Derry and going their own separate ways, they all knew that they were gonna forget each other, and that was really sad. You know?
I thought it was more of a bittersweet thing. Like they're going away from each other, but they'll always remember each other, the experiences that they had together.
Do they though, or do they forget it?
I'm not entirely like they for.
I think they accept that they're gonna forget each other once they leave each other.
Well, yeah.
But I might be wrong in that. But yeah, I mean that I agree. I think the ending was well done, and um there was even like a part where
Oh yes,
because
that's right. They do kind of like they remember Eddie's. They don't remember Eddie's last name.
yeah, they notice things are like fading away, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this means we're all gonna like our relationship is just gonna like we're gonna forget about our friendship, and that part hit me because I was like, dang, that they've been through so much to like not be able to remember this is gonna be incredibly like
I mean, I thought it was more like a
it's hard to
bittersweet
read
thing.
as a reader because we know that they're gonna forget each other, but when they forget each other, they're just gonna think like their life is normal, you know?
I mean, it's sort of bittersweet as well, because, I mean, like, Bill manages to snap his wife out of the trance, and Ben and Beverly get together. I mean, it's a bittersweet ending, or at least I think so. I could be wrong. I'm sure there might be fans in the comments who'll go like, "No, I cried at the end, you jerk." You know, maybe.
Yeah. Well, they didn't get out of it without, not completely unscathed because obviously they lost Eddie and um, Ben and Bev get together, so that was a little heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill gets Audra back. So there was, like you said, it was definitely bittersweet. Um, they got Pennywise finally. They it
Or,
destroyed
well,
Derry, but
pretty sure they did. There's like, I remember in one of
yeah,
his other books it says Pennywise lives, you know, but I think that was just
yeah,
a,
he loves doing stuff like that.
yeah, I think that was just an Easter egg though. If I remember one of his
um,
books, Pennywise shows up and waves at him, which, you know, ooh. But
oh really?
yeah, I forget which one. Also, oh yeah, they also show up in 11/22/63. That was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's Ben and Bev, right? Or
Yeah, and
Bev and Richie,
Jake's like,
something
oh
like
yeah,
that.
and then he's all like, this something's weird here, and then he leaves.
Yeah, yeah, because he drives through.
But
But
as for the
this
ending,
is
yeah.
definitely one of his better endings, I think.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
enjoyed it a
definitely in
lot.
my like top endings that he's done, because I really love I love it's final, you know, it's satisfying, it's perfectly satisfying, and it doesn't feel it doesn't there's nothing that feels out of place. It's just like you're in this journey and it's come to an end, you know.
Yeah, a long journey, albeit, but a worthwhile one,
Yeah, I mean,
and one of my favorites.
it's a long journey, but yeah, it definitely is worth it at the end, and it's just, man, it's so good. But yeah, it's definitely my top 10 King books for sure.
Yeah, it's in my top five, I think.
When your favorite The Shining?
Yeah, my favorite's The Shining.
Oh, okay. Um,
As of right now, after rereads and continuing my King journey, which I still have a lot left, that may change. It's always subject to revision, but uh, The Shining really freaked me out. That whole setting and all of it, I just really enjoyed reading. So, but yeah, I think it is three for me. 11/22/63 is like right behind it, or maybe right in front of it. I think right behind it. I don't know. I'd have to revisit it because I had my top 10 Stephen King video up on my channel, but that was 6, 7 months ago, I think, and I've read some more King since then, and that still changes. I think month to month, day to day, week to week. I don't know. It depends what kind of mood I'm in, I think.
but yeah, I think that's about it. So yeah, I know you said you were going to be reading horror stuff from people who aren't Stephen King. What do you got on for this month so far?
I have. I'm gonna read "Imaginary Friend" by Stephen Chbosky. That's a long one, but I don't know if you know who Jake from the channel The Bookish Drummer is.
I've seen some of his videos.
Okay, yeah, he's a huge King fan. That's how I found him. But he also loves reading more contemporary horror as well, and he's spoken very highly of Imaginary Friend. So I'm going to read that. I'm going to read Dracula for the first time. I've never read Dracula before.
Oh, that should be fun.
Um, yeah. I have actually I have a couple of them right here. American Psycho.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I've seen the movie. I've never read it. Um, And I went to the Three Rivers Comic Con and I met this author named Donald Firesmith. He's got this anthology of short horror stories that's about 90 pages in total. And so I'm just going to kind of throw that in between.
Oh yeah, very very cool. Yeah, I reread the Ballad of Black Tom from Victor Laval. Still holds up. I'm reading Between Two
You're a
Fires.
big fan of his, aren't you?
Yes, I quite enjoy his work. Yeah, I've read 3 of his novels so far.
I've only read one from him. I read Lone Women, and the first half was really good. I didn't like the way that it finished, though.
Oh, that's not good. I wanted to read Lone Women at some point.
I think
Um,
it's worth a shot.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, that's. I mean, I have some other books here I hope to read, but you know how it is. I we'll see.
Yeah, there's
um,
always the caveat of
now
we'll see.
I have to go face the most terrifying thing tomorrow, which is the Red River game. So that'll be fun.
What is that?
OU Texas, the Red River Shootout. It's gonna be a good
Oh,
time. Didn't you say you were going to a Bruins game?
Penguins.
Oh, Penguins.
Yeah. Yep. I'm going to the Penguins game this upcoming Tuesday, so
Oh, very nice, very nice. Well, Colin, I think that's it. Thanks for coming on and doing this with me. We should do it again sometime.
yeah, thank you again for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I love talking it.
yeah, it's a great story. Check out it. If you have any social media, Colin, feel free to share, and then I'll share them. We'll get going. I'm actually getting hungry.
Yeah, I got dinner waiting too, but yeah, just briefly again, I want to say thanks to Britton for having me on here. You can find me on YouTube at Colin's Corner. If you search Colin's Corner YT, it'll come up. Colin's Corner on Twitter as well and Instagram. So all my links to my socials are on my YouTube profile as well. So you can find me and connect with me however you feel you want to.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter, Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews as well, which are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. And also Discord. So, yeah. It was fun. And until next time.
Yes.
All right. See you guys later.
See you guys.